Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me for the kickoff here for the Ad Filtering Developer Summit for the second time. My name is Vegard, and I'm the Chief Product Officer here. So I want to start a bit off-piste, but wanted to ask if anyone knows what the American Dialect Society made their word of the year in 2023. Probably some of you are thinking American Dialect Society. It wasn't top of my reading list. Has anyone even heard of this society? All right. It's from 1889, which as a now proud American, that's like very old. I know we're in Europe. Yeah, no one? Edge? No? The good? Thank you though for saying, for proposing something. Privacy AI? No? Nice. That would be nice. We're still waiting for that day. Enshittification. Which, if you're not exactly familiar with that definition, is the pattern in which online products and services decline in quality. The word was coined by Cory Doctorow in a blog post called TikTok's Enshittification, and he talks about problems facing online platforms. Oh.
I want to have that recorded, Amanda, can you speak it up?
Hello?
Cool. It's recorded, but it's not audible on the head.
Okay. No worries. So enshittification. So we'll come back to enshittification. I'm here today to talk about our problem. So yes, we have a problem, not with each other. Together, we're on a mission to defeat bad ads and to fight the threat to consumer security and privacy. Now, we in this room are on the same team, and we're fighting for an open web, but it's one that's under threat. And it's under threat from walled gardens, which is the very subject of Cory's word innovation. And I think we all recognize that the open web can be fairly broken at times. In fact, consumers are voting with their time or with their feet, and they're spending more and more hours inside these digital enclosures that he was talking about. And the statistics here are pretty eye-opening. So it's estimated that users spend about 2.5 hours a day, which is about 15% of their waking hours inside walled gardens. And that's up 60% just since 2012. So why is that? Well, part of it may have something to do with the algorithms that know exactly when to give you the right dopamine hit. But also, and having worked, now for a long time on the underbelly of the open web, on, various parts of the open web, it can be challenging to consume. And perhaps it's our responsibility to clean it up, but I want to make the case that it's also in our interest. Much like airbags in cars, which, if you can believe it, back in the day were optional, sort of, do you want heated seat, want to not die? But they were later made mandatory, which I think is very sensible. We have a choice. Do we sit around and wait for regulators to make airbags for the internet mandatory, or do we take proactive steps? So let's take a closer look at the issues. So first of all, the big one, the consumer ad experience. It continues to be a pressing problem. We at eyeo have partnered with the Harris poll, and later on in November, we'll be coming out with some research we've done together that peels back some of the layers with that. But I don't think you need me to tell you that there's still a massive problem. We know very well from the various studies that are already out there that the significant percentage of ads, whether it's connected TV, in-app, in-flight entertainment screens. I was traveling earlier this year, and there was at the gate at the airport, there was a massive thing, and they were launching a targeted ads on in-flight entertainment screens product so that when you fly, you could have all your data ported to the little screen, and it wouldn't just be generic ads, but it would be tailored to you. So it's no wonder that people are feeling overwhelmed, irritated, and of course, driving them towards tuning out and blocking ads altogether. But here's the thing. Consumers tell us repeatedly that they understand that ads are part of the value exchange, cost of accessing free information. So it's not that they see advertising itself as the problem. And the IAB came out earlier this year with a study that showed exactly that. People understand that there is a value exchange. So let's talk a little bit about solutions, right? We're not here to talk about problems. We're here to talk about solutions. One part of that, we believe, is the acceptable ad standard. And the data supports this. So according to the IAB, 63% of users would consider disabling their ad blocker on trusted websites. And what that indicates is that the key to balancing monetization and privacy lies specifically in building trust with consumers. They feel confident that ads are going to be safe, non-intrusive, and respectful of their privacy. They're more likely to accept and engage. I'd say, great, okay, but if you're talking about ad filtering, ad blocking, what other ways are there? Well, one of them is micropayments or subscription models where users pay a small amount or a bigger amount to access content without ads. There are many variations on this theme. And I think those of you who've been around, every year someone comes out and they're like, I've got it. I have a micropayment thing and we're going to just get access that way. There's a litany, of course, of companies that have tried this and failed. Some of them, there's a very long list, but Blendle, BitPass. In fact, I've actually been part of building one myself, Funding Choices, when I was at Google. But I think the reason people, why do people keep on trying? Like it hasn't really taken off. So why do people keep on trying? Was because there is no free lunch. We do understand that there needs to be a fair value exchange. It's imperative that there's a fair value exchange if we want the people who create content to continue to create it so that people can consume it. So as far as ad blockers go, some might say they're actually an impediment then. They're interfering with that value exchange. I would say that ad blockers are the symptom. They're not the disease. They represent a user rebellion against poor ad experiences, not against advertising itself. But I think we also need to recognize the difference. Ad filtering versus ad blocking. So with ad blocking, all the ads are gone. And with filtering, we're attempting to modify the experience to make it one that is commensurate with the value exchange. But the thing I want to point to is the more one-sided the consumer benefit is, the more it's just one side of a value exchange. It doesn't seem value exchange as opposed to taking the value. The more one-sided it is, the more we're inviting an aggressive response on the other side, particularly if the solutions go from being niche to being mainstream. And adoption matters because ad blockers have evolved into something that's much, much bigger than when we started. They're not just a tool for filtering out annoyances, but they're also a means for consumers to safeguard their privacy and, frankly, to enhance their security. So let me share some data. According to eMarketer, almost 1/3 of consumers these days install ad blockers specifically out of a concern for privacy. And that's a dramatic change from, where this started, where it was really rooted in just disruptive ads. I think that shift is probably fairly obvious to people in this room. People have become generally more aware of how they're being tracked, how their data is being collected and analyzed. And high-profile scandals have shown them, how widespread this information goes. The reality is people should be worried about how their data is collected and used and tracked. I think one of the biggest single threats increasingly, and this is something that, before I was in a company that focused specifically on malware-driven ad fraud, but that malware is up to all sorts of things. So we're looking at cybersecurity and malvertising specifically. they're legitimate looking ads, but they're used to distribute malware, launch phishing attacks. They may affect reputable websites because, the ecosystem has become much more complex. It's much harder to police these third-party ad networks. And in terms of numbers, this problem, I mean, you read about it, some of the numbers are hard to believe, but it's certainly in the trillions of dollars. So we're talking about a problem whose value is the size of some countries' GDP at this point. And of course, every time someone reads about it, every time someone experiences this, it is, a business that's crippled or someone's information that's stolen, but it also erodes that trust. And often that problem starts, with a single innocent looking ad. Pew Research actually says that 8 out of 10 Americans are worried about how their data is being collected and used by companies. And they feel fairly helpless in what are they supposed to do? And I think that dovetails pretty nicely with what we know about the sort of proliferation of all these technologies, third-party cookies, cross-site tracking, and increasingly, as people are cracking down on the legitimate ways of doing things, device fingerprinting. So every click, every search, every purchase is I would say potentially, actually, it's probably not potentially, is definitely tracked and analyzed. And it's not just used simply for ad targeting in the moment, but it's traded, it's sold. And of course, most consumers have this sort of vague understanding that there's something going on, but they don't really fully understand it. And someone who's been in the industry for now many years, I wager to say that no one understands it fully, even the people who are in the thick of it. And if you think about the data breaches that we hear about, I was going to say on a weekly basis, but really on a daily basis. I live in the US, and it feels like a weekly occurrence where someone's like, oops, we lost your social security number. Here's credit monitoring. I don't know how many. In fact, signing up to credit monitoring, you're wondering if this is a phishing attack. I'm like, that would be a good one, right? It's like type in all your details so we can look for it on the dark web. I was like, no, it's already out there. Trust me. No industry is immune to this, clearly. And of course, again, this erodes the trust in consumers. Consumers have in the system. Now, it's already come up, and I suspect we'll hear about AI multiple times today. In fact, Andrea is going to talk a bit about it immediately after this talk. Of course, AI brings all sorts of good and wonderful things, but there are also, the other side of it. So on one hand, from the ads perspective, it's likely to revolutionize the ads creation and targeting process. We're already seeing people introducing AI-generated copy, AI-generated tailored images. I know that where this is headed is to really, truly dynamic, very tailored ads in real time based on how you interact and how you engage with the system. But I guess one question is, do users want this? Are they okay with that value exchange? On the challenge side, we definitely see sophisticated AI-powered made for advertising sites with essentially no content and full of ads, and they're designed to just lure people in and scrape their data. And I think that what this all boils down to is a need for users to take an increasing amount of control of their user experience. Let's talk about that briefly. At the end of the day, it all really goes back to this, the user experience. Everything we do must be rooted in ensuring and looking after the user. And I think we represent a bit of a minority in that. Users are our partners in negotiating that value exchange that powers the open web. We need to participate in bringing transparency and giving users control. Apple's move towards consent for tracking, I think, is a step in the right direction. I don't want to sort of single anything out as it's a panacea. But I think giving users a real choice and a fair value exchange, users do opt in. It's not that they're against this. And I think the companies that succeed in this environment will be the ones that balance their business model, what they want, with what the user wants and their expectation for privacy. And I think that means developing ad experiences and experiences in general that are respectful and non-invasive and that are transparent. And I think ad blockers and ad filtering is a really important part of that journey to get there, because it really is an antidote or a way of controlling the sort of bad behaviors that spoiled the bunny. So just talk briefly about a business model. We all, we got to have money. You got to pay the mortgage. You got to buy clothes. You got to put food on the table. But we also need it to solve these challenges. I believe we need to maintain robust business models because, whether we need to leverage LLMs to combat new threats, if LLMs are the threat, maybe we need LLMs to combat it. Now that costs money. And I think if we're going to provide safety, security, privacy for users, they will increasingly require that we invest to provide those. We believe that we have an obligation to maintain a solid business model at eyeo. Why should users care? Well, because they're relying on us increasingly, not for nice to have features, but for, and to protect their privacy, but rather to protect their privacy and security. And without a sustainable business model, we simply can't invest. So to that end, we have an ad blocking revenue recovery messaging tool that's now in beta, and it's designed to look after that value exchange. It renders a messaging interface to ad blockers and starts that conversation between the content creator and the content consumer, and giving them choices in how they support that. And for me, this is part of the bigger picture where I envision us, the people in this room and the industry, evolving into a less adversarial stance and more of an ecosystem where we work side by side. If we end up in a highly adversarial or antagonistic relationship, the user is the real loser. We should collaborate and innovate to make sure that we build the internet that we believe in, that users, content creators, and businesses deserve. So just finishing up, the next couple of days, we have a lot of interesting talks. And I really appreciate everyone who's traveled here, everyone who's put effort into creating content. I'm really excited about it. We're going to hear about MB3, using LLMs to combat online tracking, extension fingerprinting. We're going to hear about guerrilla tactics and tracker flaring, advertising in ChatGPT. We have our browser friends who are here to give us some updates, and many, many more topics. So to close out, Cory Doctorow, he remarked at the end of his enshittification diatribe, the internet isn't more important than the climate emergency, gender justice, racial justice, genocide, or inequality. But the internet is the terrain we'll fight those fights on. Without a free, fair, and open internet, the fight is lost before it's joined. Now, we didn't get into this mess overnight, and we're not going to fix it overnight, but I look forward to working together to fix it. So thank you very much. Welcome.